What do we have to do to make things not just survive, but thrive? Let's go to space. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fridays with Orbital Assembly. I'm Tim Alatorre, Chief Operating Officer, and today I'm joined by Dr. Jeff Greenblatt, our VP of Science and Research and pretty much everything that's fun at Orbital Assembly. Thanks for being here today, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Glad to have you. And thanks for everybody who's tuning in live or who's watching this replay. We've got several people on stream, and we'll be getting to your questions later. So if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to what we can today. As normal, we'll just go over a couple of topics ahead of time, and with that, I'll bring up our slides. Today is January 6th, 2023. It's hard to believe that we have gone around the sun another time here, Jeff. Was your holiday one of joy or one of misery?
Fortunately, joy, because I didn't go anywhere. And we did have an ice storm the week before Christmas out where I am in Oregon, and it almost derailed my daughter's journey back home from the East Coast. But fortunately, she left a few days early, and we avoided all the mishaps.
Yeah, that storm hit us down here in Huntsville really the day after Christmas is when that hit, and it was definitely a fun one. My kids enjoyed the snow, but there were a lot of destruction and accidents, and not good for some people. Thankfully, we were left unscathed. And in space there is weather of a different sort, which is caused by the sun, solar storms, and that's something that we've given much thought to. And I don't know if people know this, but there is weather forecasting for space. There you can actually kind of see what the space weather's like. And that's to operating in space. Just a reminder to everybody that we do have two investment rounds open currently. We have our Reg CF raise, which is available for unaccredited investors, and our Reg D raise for accredited investors. We're actively pushing to close that Reg D round in the next month or two. So if you'd like to participate in either of these, you can go to orbitalassembly.com/invest, and that page will route you to the appropriate portal. And for anybody who's interested, we also recently posted on our YouTube channel a couple of interviews I had with investors in our current raise, a few investors who've participated in the Reg CF round with this current cycle, and there'll be more of those interviews coming out soon. So check those out. Really interesting conversation with Dr. Nunes about pets in space. She's a veterinarian, and hopefully we'll have her in future conversations, because that's something that I hadn't really given much thought to until we talked to Jeff, but I could see that being a really important aspect to future communities in space. And there's no reason you couldn't have a pet on Pioneer or Voyager.
Sure.
And with that, Jeff, here's your face again on the screen. Just a plug for our Future in Space podcast, and you can go to news.orbitalassembly.com to find links to all the latest episodes. And at the first of the year, we actually moved the new episodes for our Future in Space to their own YouTube channel. And that's more YouTube algorithmic friendly. And season 1 will remain on the main channel. It'll also be on the new channel. But if you want to see the new episodes, make sure you subscribe to that new channel. It's Our Future in Space. And we're going to continue to stream live the recordings on the main Orbital Assembly channel. It's just the finished episodes are going to go on the second channel. And we're also going to be releasing a bunch more shorts. And that's something that there's so many little snippets and sound bites in these episodes. How many episodes have we done now, Jeff?
Over 30, something like 32, 33. Yeah.
And there's a number of them that have been recorded that are in the queue to be released. But there's so many sound bites and really important information in these different episodes. But not everybody has time to listen to 30 hours of conversation. So we're working on snipping out some of the best highlights, and those are going to be put on that second channel. So make sure you check that out. And along those lines, you had a couple of really interesting recent episodes. We finished off season 1 with 2 just outstanding interviews. We had one with Dr. Ronke Olabisi, who was talking about the recent artificial gravity study we did. And then you had a panel conversation about making, what was the title of it? It was Space is for Everyone.
Yes. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
super exciting and fascinating, and we brought in a bunch of people from different perspectives in the space industry to talk about their experiences trying to get more minorities and other people who don't usually spend a lot of time talking about space more involved, and we're dedicated to moving that forward. So I'm excited to have more
yeah,
discussions like
that
that.
was a really powerful conversation to wrap out the year, and I think for me it really underscored, why we're doing what we're doing. Space has been such a limited, closed ecosystem, and that's really the core of why Orbital Assembly started, was how do we get more people in space, right? At
That's
lower
right.
cost, greater safety, less risk, and opening up space for everybody. And there's actually a new T-shirt available on our shop. You go to what is it? shop.orbitalassembly.com, I think. Anyways, there's a new Space for Everybody T-shirt, and a couple of variations will be coming out of that as well. And then we just kicked off season 2 with an excellent interview and conversation. It was yourself, Jeff, Tom Spilker, Dr.
Mhm.
Andy Aldrin, who is a very accomplished individual in his own right, but of course, son of Dr. Buzz Aldrin, who really has been pushing this concept of a Mars cycler for years now. And then
Mhm.
Dr. Brian Kaplinger, and maybe just give a quick overview of what that conversation was about, because that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea is that if you get a spacecraft on a particular trajectory called a cycler trajectory, it will pass both Earth and Mars on a regular basis with very little need for propellant to make small adjustments to the trajectory. And so, what it allows is for people to not only not have to use as much fuel to get to and from, in this case, Mars, but it can be done for all other planets in the solar system as well. But it can also shorten the trip considerably. And so it's really an amazing concept, and its time might be coming in the next few years. So Dr. Kaplinger has done a bunch of research, modeling of this kind of system, and we delve into quite a lot of detail with him and Dr. Aldrin.
And it's a real strong use case for the Pioneer and Voyager class stations. For anybody
That's
who's
right.
seen The Martian, right, that movie, there was a great visualization of a potential. Uh, I guess it's not really a Mars cycler, but it is in a sense, in that they didn't really break when they passed by Mars. They sent down a craft, and the I can't remember what the
Yeah,
spacecraft name
it
is.
was also rotating, if I recall, right? So that
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. It had that rotating portion, which really, if you're going to be making that Mars transit, you really would want to have some artificial gravity. I think there's another concept out there of just accelerating continuously, well, to the halfway point, and then you decelerate, and that acceleration and deceleration gives
Hmm.
you a gravity vector. And there's actually one of our customers, Jeffrey Morris. He's working on a science fiction movie, Prometheus, where they're doing that. They're having an accelerate. They're accelerating out to give them gravity. They're then reversing the direction of the ship and decelerating on their way
Hmm.
to their destination. That's one method of doing it, but it's very propellant intensive, because you have to be accelerating the entire journey, which
Yeah.
uh, with current technology doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you want to have any significant gravity level. But with a Pioneer station, for example, you spin that up once, then you can accelerate it to get to the velocity you need for your Mars cycler. I guess you could even accelerate it and assemble it in that cycler orbit too. I think that's one of the things you talk about, some different methodologies for constructing
Yeah,
that.
building it up over time. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the main point is to get it on that orbit and to really understand the orbits and the trade-offs and what's best for the particular mission in mind. But yeah, anyway, please tune in. It's a fascinating discussion, and we hardly scratched the surface. So I'm hoping we can do a deeper dive at some point.
Yeah, and a question that I've heard a few times is, why are we putting energy into doing these conversations? I think really what it is we're having these conversations anyways. We're in the space community, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking to these people all the time, and what we're doing is we're just recording these conversations and putting them out there and making them available for you. It's important for us, as we're looking at the current and future markets, to understand all the complexities and factors that are going into developing space, and who's going to be using space and why are they using space. And so uh, we're basically just, passing this on to you so you can kind of be a participant in it. And along those lines, just going back to Dr. Olabisi here, we did complete that study. Well, the study was completed. I will not take any credit for it whatsoever. Dr. Mae Jemison, MD, former NASA astronaut, and Ronke Olabisi, PhD at University of Irvine, and I should also plug Mae's 100-Year Starship initiative. I think we started on this road with them last year. It was like January or February of last year. We reached out and started that conversation with Mae about doing this comprehensive report and study on the effects of microgravity in human physiology and the potential benefits and what is known about rotating environments. Like, we've done a lot of internal research through the last 5+ years, but having a third party come through, pull everything they could, and really do a deep dive on it has been a process. I was really hopeful we were going to release it back in September, but Dr. Jemison and Olabisi are very professional, wanted to be in the best position possible, and so we just got it out in December. But maybe we, Jeff, I know we've both read the report several times. Are there some highlights in there, some things that people should be aware of, or things that you found impactful?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a really rich, information-rich report, and I would say it's certainly one of the most comprehensive reviews of the state of knowledge that I have read. So not only does it have a very thorough review of the idea of artificial gravity systems, rotating environments, and the research that's been done on them, as well as a review of the kinds of physiological changes that happen to the human body in a microgravity environment and how that is currently dealt with, and how we think that the effects of artificial gravity could help to alleviate that. I think that the takeaway is that there's a clear case that artificial gravity, could confer tremendous benefits on people in space that is not really adequately remedied by the kinds of countermeasures, as they're called, that astronauts engage in right now, exercise and nutrition and so on, which are all good, but they still don't get everything. But that we don't actually know for sure how well artificial gravity is going to work, because it's impossible to do simulations on Earth. We're always in a gravity field, and we've had almost zero experience doing these kinds of even small scale experiments actually in space. And so we really need, we have enough evidence from the ground-based studies and the very limited studies that we've done on orbit to sort of recommend going forward. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions that Orbital Assembly is certainly excited to participate in and facilitate. And one of them is just, how much of a gravity field do humans need long-term in order to stay healthy? Do we need full 1G? Could half a G be sufficient? Could you just get small doses of a gravity field, maybe once a day or even a few times a week for an hour or two? Those kinds of experiments need to be explored to understand exactly what the response is. And then also, I guess another question is, what do you start with? How large of a system do you have in terms of the rotational radius? Because we know that at very small radii, it can feel quite disorienting. If it's only a couple of meters long, kind of the length of a human body, the difference in gravity, perceived gravity between head and foot, is quite significant. And so, it does suggest that the approach that our company is taking of having it being several meters in radius at minimum, such as shown for Pioneer Station here, is a good starting point. And then it's just the question of how large is going to be optimal going forward. So anyway, those are some takeaways that I
think like I said, we've been independently researching this for a number of years, and there was nothing in the report that came as a surprise to us, or that we, at least from my perspective, felt like we were going in the wrong direction. I felt like everything we've been doing has been in the right direction as it relates to artificial gravity and rotating environments and habitat design. But I think what really impacted me was seeing all of the negative impacts of microgravity compiled in one comprehensive list. There's a news article that comes out every few months about some other issue, but it really, solidified in my mind the need that if we're going to have average people who aren't test pilots for the Air Force and people who've basically signed their lives away, but average people who want to go up and live and participate and work in space, we need to have some mitigation for microgravity. And microgravity is a ton of fun. Like, I don't think there's any disputing the astronauts who go up to space. They love the sensation and the feeling of being in microgravity once they get past all of the nausea and the space sickness, right, once they've adapted. But there's things like you just can't taste your food, right? I don't think it takes a lot of artificial gravity to help the fluids in your sinus system drain to where you can actually enjoy food. But there might be, like you're saying, there's still research that needs to be understood to understand things like bone density, how much gravity we need to offset the loss of calcium in our bones, right?
Yeah, and to the point where you don't have to exercise for 2 or 3 hours a day, which is what astronauts need to do now. If it can get down to sort of a more, Earth level of exercise, maybe a few times a week, that would free up a lot more time, and it would really just unburden, people's schedules. And also, Tim, I'll just mention, there's practical aspects too. In addition to the opportunity to maybe do low gravity manufacturing and certainly research, which is important to understand what environments we're going to be encountering when we go to the moon and asteroids and Mars, of course. There's also just the idea that the ISS and other places in space are really sort of dirty, partly because particles that are shed from people's skin and clothing and particles of food, they float around. Whereas, everything settles to the floor, even in a partial gravity environment, which makes cleanliness easier, and obviously, plumbing and, movement of
well, from an environmental control system issue, right? In microgravity,
right.
When you're exhaling, you basically create a CO2 bubble around your face, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of ventilation on ISS to make sure you don't end up with pockets of gases where you end up with some sort of danger, right?
Right, anoxic condition,
Once you have even a small amount of artificial gravity, now fluid densities start to take over and you end up with natural convection and circulation. And anyways, we could go on for hours and hours and hours. That's not the point of this call, but I wanted to touch on some highlights. If you haven't downloaded it yet, go to orbitalassembly.com/gravity and you can find the report there. You can also find it on Dr. Jemison's 100-Year Starship website. Okay, well, the chat is flying. There's all sorts of stuff happening in chat. So let's I'll dig in here, and for the last few minutes, we will get to what questions we can. Hello to Phoenix, Arizona. Shout out to Phoenix. And so Simon's got a question about orbital assembly demonstrations. I'm guessing the latest news, not the last news there, Simon. So we did have a demonstration of our truss builder in 2021 in Fontana. Last year, we could say it was last year, but now we're in 2023. Time is moving quickly. I don't anticipate another demonstration happening this year, but we are working to get some full-scale and partial-scale prototypes together where hopefully we'll be able to have investors come out and you can actually touch and see the hardware. I was just on a call yesterday. We're trying to figure out how we might be able to get some of those out to some different shows and events this year. So our investors and customers can start to interface in a physical sense with the first phase Pioneer Station. Right now, we are pushing hard to get flight hardware manufactured. So the next real, I guess, demo is going to be in a laboratory setting where we're testing the flight hardware. And those most likely won't be open to the public. Those are closed testing facilities. But we'll definitely share what we can as far as photos and videos and that sort of thing. A lot of conversation in the chat about artificial gravity, and also about interior design. So the interior design of the modules is really my wheelhouse. That's where my background in architecture comes into play. And I've had a lot of opportunities to talk to different NASA and retired NASA individuals who design habitats for shuttle and ISS. And you'll probably notice in the more recent renderings of Pioneer Phase 1, we actually modified the interior habitat design. Even though that Phase 1 module is microgravity, we've now made that more consistent with what will be present in the gravity modules. The idea being that again, looking at modularity and feed-forward architecture, we're not shutting out the possibility that that module can be repurposed for a gravity environment. So yeah, definitely thinking, keeping in mind where the forces are directing as you're in rotation and orientations. It all comes into play there. A question for you, Jeff, here is, this is from our friend Aiden, Aiden did an interview with us as well. Check that out on YouTube. Aiden always has some great questions. His question, Jeff, is about nuclear fusion, and if you think there's any potential future fit for OIC stations. Any thoughts on that?
Thanks for the question. I mean, nuclear fusion is certainly a really exciting, possibility as an energy source, and it's not just for making electricity, but obviously it's a very hot. It's a system that generates a lot of heat, and so it can be used for heating. But I think one of the most exciting applications, not yet available, but something that researchers have been looking at, is using it as a very high efficiency propulsion system. It's so-called direct fusion drive, where the fusion products are injected out the back, kind of like a rocket. And getting to your earlier point, Tim, about accelerating quickly and getting to destinations within the solar system, that could eventually be a fusion-driven solution. But we're still quite far. I mean, I know most people have heard the headlines about a breakthrough, break-even achievement at the National Ignition Facility, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have commercial fusion in the next year or two. It's still, I would say, at least a decade away, and there are a lot of technical hurdles that have. But when there's a vendor who can sell us a compact fusion electricity system that we can put on a future space station, we'll buy it. I mean, if the price is right.
Right, and I think fusion for energy is really the holy grail of energy, right? The breakthrough that happened in California this last year, it was neutral or slightly energy positive for what was happening in the reaction. But when you look at the entire process, my understanding is that there was a tremendous amount of energy that was needed to get the energy to put into the system. So when you look at the whole process, they weren't quite energy neutral yet. Still a massive step in the right direction. We're getting there.
Yes.
Let's see. Got some other conversation here about some gravity. So questions about scalability. So one of the things we're doing with Orbital Assembly is not relying on future technology. We're looking at what are the stepping stones to get us to space right now. And actually, I'll just see if I can pull up this other slide deck from last week. But that includes not relying on past. So here's kind of our general product roadmap here, but not relying on future launch capabilities, but working with existing capabilities. So when we're looking at our different product offerings, the Pioneer Phase 1 station, that's our station in a box, which we'll be sending more information out about actually, hopefully in the next week. We're going to be having a deep dive webinar on that for potential customers. And actually, any of you who are interested, we'll be going into all the station specs for the Phase 1 station. But that can be launched with an existing 5-meter fairing, and all of Pioneer and currently Voyager are planned to be able to be launched with existing launch capabilities. So yes, Starship and large heavy launch vehicles will mean that we can scale faster, but we're not relying on that. Let's see here. There's a question from Kyle is asking, would you need a different type of HVAC system than ISS since it's an orbital ring and in a sense would have an up and down direction due to gravity? So HVAC, that's an abbreviation for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. In space terms, we use a more broad term called ECLS or ECLS, depending on what part of the country you're from. I've heard it a couple different ways, which stands for Environmental Control and Life Support System, which encompasses a lot more than just ventilation, heating, and air conditioning, because you have to maintain your different gas levels, and there's also
contaminant
removal and things like that. Yeah. So the environmental control system for maintaining proper oxygen levels and contaminant removal really would be identical to what would be used on any other spacecraft. Gravity allows us, however, to have a much more simplified ventilation system. So thermal control is pretty much identical, but air circulation becomes a lot simpler. So like if in a terrestrial building, in a single room, for example, you might have one supply and one return register. On ISS and other spacecraft, there's multiple supply and returns because you're trying to keep that air circulating. So the cost to install that system and all the ductwork goes down dramatically once you have a level of artificial gravity. Let's see. There's a question from Dave. If there's a need for 3D modelers for design, yes, and we are going to be needing more. So send information if you're interested. In working with us. Send information to info@orbitalassembly.com. Let's see here. So, question from Juan. He's asking, why not focus using energies or engines to create artificial gravity first? Maybe you can touch on that one, Jeff.
Oh. Engines. If what you mean, Juan, is using that linear acceleration that Tim was talking about, I'm not sure if that's your intention there, but yeah, if that's the case, that is actually a much more propellant intensive solution than rotating. Because the thing with rotation is you don't have to spin it very fast in order to get very useful levels of artificial gravity. And then once it's spun, it continues to provide that gravity service without any further expenditure of propellant. If you're in a linear situation, it's mainly because you're trying to get somewhere quickly, but you're burning fuel the whole time that those are on. And as soon as you turn it off, the gravity goes away. So you kind of have to keep that going to maintain the gravity level inside.
Yeah, now the rotating station does require a bit more propellant for precession than ISS because the rotating wheel does essentially create a gyroscope, but it's still, it's minor compared to continual acceleration.
Yeah.
Another question is it really possible to dock space vessels all around the space station as it churns more or less fast? No, it's not. That's a misconception that I'm not really sure how we combat that other than answering it a lot. So the current mission ops is never dock a spacecraft to the outer ring of the space station when it's in rotation. So here, Voyager Station, you see all of these Dream Chasers from Sierra Space around the perimeter, and even on Pioneer Station, we have Dream Chasers docked there. Those are just, in essence, lifeboats. So those are emergency return vehicles, and they're there to make sure that at any given point, we have enough capacity on board to get all the occupants off station. And when the station's rotating, releasing those spacecraft, they basically just get off into space. They continue with the velocity they had prior to being attached to the station, and then we can land those as needed. The docking on Voyager, as shown here in this image, would happen at the core, at the center of the station, which is despun. That there's a docking port that is not rotating relative to the approaching spacecraft. And for the imagery of Pioneer shown here, Pioneer would stop rotation, docking would occur, and then it would spin up again. And so that's the basic mission ops there. We wouldn't dock to a rotating ring. At some point, maybe spacecraft and AI flight automation would be advanced enough to do that, but not yet. It's at risk. Not there yet. Yeah. Let's see here. Juan's asking, can you use microbiology to identify balanced atmospheres? So that is an actually really interesting question. I'll let you tackle that one, Jeff. I've got some thoughts on it as well, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm not a microbiologist, so I'm not sure how much I can say other than yes, it's a good idea. Certainly, our Earth's atmosphere is balanced by a very large biome, right? As we know. Yeah, I mean, we've been in conversation with several vendors and researchers about this possibility of eventually transitioning to something that would be more biologically based rather than the mechanical ecosystem that Tim was talking about initially. And I think long term, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe it would be a hybrid system that would use some mechanical systems for things that are harder for biology to do on the small scale of a space station. But I mean, plants remove CO2 and make oxygen. So, and they do a lot of other useful services as well. So anyway, if you want to add something.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think the one thing I'd add is we are actually working on basically a research mission jointly with a couple of different partner companies and NASA to do a demo mission testing mechanical versus biological ecosystems and that interplay. This is sort of a tangential thing to pioneer. It's future tech development. We hope that we can use it someday. Not critical to our roadmap, but yeah, definitely questions we're asking and problems we're looking at solving. So we're out of time here, but I'll just take maybe one or two more questions here. Again, really appreciate the dialogue in chat today. Thank you all for participating. Aiden had a question about, well, I guess there's a ongoing conversation to hear about different ways to generate artificial gravity and possibly using gravitational pull of other celestial bodies to generate those gravitational forces. And then there's a question here about placing a station around Venus or Mercury and if it's too hazardous. So there's a lot going on there. Let's just take the stations around other planets part. I think that's an easier one. We don't have a lot of time to get into orbital mechanics.
Yeah, maybe we'll do our Future in Space episode on this topic at some point.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and answer that, Tim, or would you like me to?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I guess
yeah,
specifically Venus and Mercury, right?
Venus and Mercury, yeah, interesting. I mean, as gravitational bodies, I don't see any inherent hazard in orbiting around either of those planets. We've done it with spacecraft, already. The solar intensity is, of course, that much higher. It's about twice as high on Venus as it is on Earth, and it's something like 6 to 10 times higher on Mercury. It's a more eccentric orbit, so it varies. And I think that would be the biggest concern, is how do you deal with a much higher thermal radiation environment? It also means you'd get more power for the same area of solar panel. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're out of the atmosphere sufficiently, and of course, Venus has a very thick, dense atmosphere, so it's going to extend a little further into space than on Earth in terms of slowing orbiting spacecraft down. I don't see any showstoppers there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Yeah, and then I guess just looking out past, because Kyle's got a follow-up question about Saturn. So the radiation issue is one that is a challenge when you get into the inner solar system. Looking like we're talking about the Mars cycler, or going to Mars or Saturn or Jupiter or the outer planets, the solar radiation becomes less of an issue. Still an issue when you're not within the magnetic field of Earth, but not.
And actually, the Jupiter system, because it has such a large magnetic field, it actually brings in a lot of those solar particles that might not be as damaging otherwise, and so it's quite a high radiation environment around Jupiter, as I understand it. But radiation's an issue everywhere, right? I forgot to mention that Venus doesn't have a strong magnetic field at all, and so actually there would be that concern, that we don't have as much on Earth.
Yeah, Earth is a nice little cradle for life here. There's a lot of things going on here. But great. Well, with that, I just really appreciate everybody coming on, and again, appreciate the conversation in chat, and maybe we'll get into some of these more interesting ideas about using planets for gravity and gravity assists and all that sort of thing in a future deep dive conversation, because there's definitely a lot to that. But with that, if you are interested in supporting us, make sure you go to orbitalassembly.com/invest, and of course follow us on all the social media channels. And if you have any questions we didn't get to, feel free to reach out to us at social@orbitalassembly.com. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.